Okay, so you guys have sent in a whole stack of articles about panda diplomacy.
And specifically, like, the agreements, the contracts behind those adorable bears that end up in, American zoos.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really curious. What made you want to, like, dig deeper into this?
Yeah, I
Because
have.
even just, like, skimming these articles, I'm getting the sense that
Yeah.
there's a lot more
Absolutely.
to panda exchanges.
Oh, absolutely, than meets the eye.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we see these pandas as kind of, these fluffy ambassadors.
Right.
But the agreements.
That kind of are behind their very presence here, tell a much more kind of complicated
Right.
story about international relations.
Yeah, for sure. And, we were talking about those 4 new pandas that just arrived in U.S. zoos, right?
Yes.
Which is making headlines. Everybody's talking about it. But, like,
Yeah.
these articles suggest that the deals themselves have really shifted.
And one of the things that really stuck out to me was how the China Wildlife Conservation Association
Yeah.
seems to be wielding a lot more control these days.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a definite shift towards more control
Hmm.
in recent agreements versus how these exchanges were handled in the past.
And even one of the phrases that I saw in one of the articles was like information management.
Which honestly sounds like something out of, like, a spy thriller.
Small chuckle. Yeah, it's a very loaded term for sure.
So what's the deal with that?
So essentially, it means that American zoos now face very strict limitations on what they can and cannot say publicly about the pandas in their care.
So it's not as simple as, like, sending out a press release if a panda gets a cold.
No, 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 not anymore.
Like, let's take a panda's health, for instance. Discussing any illness or, heaven forbid, death requires direct approval from Chinese authorities,
Wow.
which is a really significant departure from standard zoo practices, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, to say the least.
In any other context, like,
Yeah.
not being able to be open about the health of an animal under your care would be,
Hmm.
like, unheard of.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, why?
Why such tight control?
Exactly. It begs the question, is this purely about the panda's well-being?
Right.
Or are there larger kind of political or diplomatic factors at play?
And this control extends beyond just health. Even the way we talk about the financial side of these agreements is very carefully dictated.
Oh, right, because one article mentioned that it costs like $1.1 million a year
Per panda pair.
per pair.
Plus all the expenses for Chinese experts to come over. I mean, that's a hefty price tag for some panda diplomacy.
And, like, does that money go directly to conservation efforts?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And the agreement is very particular about the language we use, like words like lease or rental, completely off limits.
Really?
The preferred term, cooperative research and breeding agreement.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like they're really trying to steer clear of any language that suggests that pandas are,
Commodity.
commodity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's control over the money, there's control over the messaging.
These articles also mention some changes to, like, those Panacams we all love?
Ah, yes.
It seems like the days of kind of unrestricted 24/7 panda streaming might be numbered.
Really?
Remember that incident at the Memphis Zoo a while back?
The one where the public witnessed a panda's declining health in real time?
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
It caused quite a stir.
Yeah, it felt like everyone was watching that kind of unfold.
So what's changed since then?
Well, zoos are playing it much safer now. San Diego, for example, is limited to streaming kind of pre-approved footage and only during daylight hours.
Wow.
The National Zoo has a less restrictive approach. They allow live streaming, but even then, there's a time delay just in case.
So even our glimpse into the pandas' lives is kind of
Filtered.
Yeah.
I imagine the stakes must be so high.
For these zoos, like, what happens if they were to even accidentally
Yep, the terms of this agreement.
The consequences could be really significant. The most drastic measure would be the recall of the pandas back to China.
Wow.
And of course, there's a potential for kind of diplomatic fallout as well.
Right.
These agreements are incredibly complex and they go far beyond the simple act of kind of sharing adorable animals.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
I mean, the next time you see a panda, whether it's, on a live cam or in person at the zoo, maybe take a moment to consider
Yeah.
that whole kind of intricate web of diplomacy, finances, and even kind of,
Mm.
censorship that brought it there.
It's true.
What other aspects of this situation kind of pique your curiosity? What questions will you be pondering?
After this deep dive.